Hello and Grüß Gott. Today we're going to do the 600 mile or 1,000 kilometer running in check on my 2012 BMW F650GS. So here I've printed out the required maintenance schedule for this particular maintenance event, and I have everything out on the table that I'm going to need to perform the job. If you don't have the right tools, you cannot do this job. So some of the things you'll need are a new oil filter, an oil filter wrench made specifically for BMW. You'll need 3 quarts of oil, which is 2.9 liters approximately. Comes out just about 3 quarts. So here I'm going to use Valvoline 10W40 full synthetic motorcycle oil specifically formulated for motorcycles. You'll need some gaskets for the drain plug. So you'll have to have some of those. You're going to need, BMWs don't use the standard OBD2 CAN bus. This is what most cars use, and also some motorcycles such as Triumph use this so that you can check your scan codes. BMW decided to be different, and so with BMW you have to buy a GS911 unless you have the BMW device, which is called a Moditech, and I'm sure that cost a lot of money. This is about $300, this GS911, and that allows you to scan up to 10 motorcycles. You'll need a proper Newton meter torque wrench. This is a snap-on. You'll need a instrument to measure millimeters. You'll need a hand torque wrench for things like 2 or 3 Newton meters, which is some of the smaller values. You'll need a complete set of Torx bits, and you'll need some metric wrenches. So the first thing that is called for in the service, I've actually already done it, but I'm going to show you how to do it, and that is to check the codes. So to do that, you're going to remove the seat, take it off and set it aside. This is that Sergeant seat, which I really like. And this is the plug you're going to pull loose, and the end comes off just like that. And what you're going to do is take a laptop computer and your GS911, and you're going to plug this in. There's a cable that comes with this. It plugs to the computer. You can make a wireless link. You have to go onto their site, register your BMW serial number, and then you can go ahead and run all of your code checks, which I already did. Also, the great thing about this is it came with a beta software version that allows you to select English units rather than metric units for all of the functions on the computer. So I thought that was quite a good thing to have. So I've already read the codes, and I made a printout, and the printout shows that everything found no fault codes for every module. So that's one of the great things about this tool. So you can do that. Next thing I'm going to do is I need to change the oil. And so in order to do that, I'm going to have to warm up the motorcycle. Before I do that though, I have to take off this skid plate. So I'm going to remove the skid plate. I'm going to take the motorcycle for a quick drive. We'll drain the oil. So we'll come back to that point in the video, and we'll start there. Okay, I removed my skid plate. This is the standard BMW part, and this here is a T45 Torx. So the 2 bolts here that go to this bracket are T30s. I need to tighten them up. I found out from the dealer it's all loose. Everything actually was loose. These are 13 millimeter nuts. So what I'll do is when I put all this back together, I'll put some Loctite and I'll secure them to the correct torque settings. So in the meantime, I'm going to remove the filter, and to do that, I have a special filter wrench tool I bought from BMW, and you simply just put it over the filter and it fits right on there, and we're going to crank it loose. I've preheated my motorcycle. I took it out for a short drive. So we're going to take this loose. It's definitely going to drip some oil onto these brackets here. I don't see any way to avoid it. So what I'm going to do is let it drip out. And once I have the filter off, I will put some oil on the gasket of the new filter and I'll install that. I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll take the drain plug out the side here. This is a 10 millimeter drain plug. And we will drain the oil out there. And then we will put it on with a new gasket or O-ring. It's a copper seal actually. And we'll torque it to the correct setting, which I'll tell you in a few minutes. So I'll be right back. Okay, this oil filter I hand tightened, and it gets put on at 14 Newton meters, so you have to use the special BMW wrench or filter wrench to do it. So I've actually already tightened it up, and I'm just going to check, and there it is. It's 14 Newton meters, so that's fine now. The drain plug gets tightened to 40. So I'm going to set my torque wrench for 40 Newton meters, and I'm going to come back and tighten that. I'm going to use a 10 millimeter Allen. So I'm going to set that up here, and I'll be right back. So the drain plug gets tightened up to 40 Newton meters. You use a 10 millimeter Allen type wrench. I have it on there right now, and I actually tightened it up, but I want to check my work. So there we go, at 40, so that's fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall the skid plate. I'm going to put some oil in it and run it, and we'll come back at that point and see. I'll show you how to check the oil. All right, I've put 3 quarts of oil in, and I've cleaned up my mess, and I put everything back together. That took over 2 hours because I found out the dealer, when they installed this in this, had not done it correctly. They had cross-threaded some bolts. Those had to be rectified and repaired, and they broke a bolt underneath, and hence the skid plate was hanging a little bit loose. It was not solid. It does sit on kinematic suspension mounts, and so I have to go out and buy a couple of those where the dealer had snapped them off. I can't imagine how anybody can be in business and do that kind of stuff. I've run the motorcycle until the radiators come on for 1 minute. So what I'm going to do now is check the oil. The engine is hot. So to do that, it's interesting. The manual says to put it on the center stand, which is optional equipment. Fortunately, mine has that, but I don't know what you do if you don't have it. And so here's the dipstick. It shows min and max. You're supposed to put it in there, but not thread it in. So we're going to see how our oil level is. And it looks to me like it's somewhere between min and max. So I'm not sure I really want to add any more lubricant. I think I'll just let it sit for a minute and recheck it again. Let me check it again here. Well, it shows it to be pretty low. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on this and see what the true level is. Some of the people on the internet say you need to add a little more than 3 quarts, but it does say 2.9 liters if you change the filter, which I did. So again, I'm not really sure why 3 quarts wouldn't have completely filled it up. Yeah, it's definitely right in between min and max. So I'm going to look in the instructions and see if that's what it calls for. And then we'll either top it up a little bit or leave it as it is. I don't really want to be putting more than 3 quarts in because that's what it called for. Okay, so I've checked that off on the list, and now I'm going to have to check a couple other things, so I'll be right back. Okay, checking coolant level. I took this panel off, and the radiator tank, the overflow tank is right here, and there's a minimum mark down at the bottom and a maximum mark up higher on that tank. And right now, with the engine hot, the coolant level is just slightly above the minimum level. So the manual doesn't state whether that's normal for a hot engine. So what I need to do is let it cool down and see if the coolant level comes back up or if I'm going to need to add coolant. So that's another issue I've come across. So I'll just have to let that be for the moment and come check it later. Next thing on the list is checking the clutch play. And I'll do that here in a second. Okay, so the clutch is here on the left side. To check the clutch play, you turn the handlebars to the left and you pull this cable loose and you measure the distance here, and it needs to be 2 to 3 millimeters. And I've already done that and it's correct. It's set up correctly. So that's fine. So that's done. Checking spoke tension is the next on the list. Well, these don't have spokes. One thing I did check is the tire rims, because these tires have been leaking about 2 psi a week, and I found the rims are gouged. I've never had an accident with it, never damaged it. Somehow it either came from the factory or from the dealer like that. It's very concerning. I almost get the feeling this is a used bike, although I checked the VIN number, it never had been sold before. And I certainly paid more than full retail. So I'm very concerned that, that the tires are leaking down a bit. So there's nothing I can do about it at the moment though. I certainly can't afford new rims, and even if it's under warranty, how do I prove it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll need to check chain tension next, and to do that I have to put it on a side stand, and it should have 30 to 40 millimeters of movement. So I'll do that next. Okay, this has to be between 30 and 40 millimeters deflection. So if I set this to 4 and lift it up, we're right at about 40. So that's pretty much right where it should be, sitting unloaded on its side stand. So I think that's good. I am going to check the tension on this. This should be 100 Newton meters. So I'm going to have to use my big boy torque wrench, which is in Newton meters. So I'll do that. And I'm going to make sure these are tightened up as well. I had the spec on those. I think it was 19 Newton meters, but I'll have to recheck. Okay, so I've checked the rear axle to make sure it's tight, and both of these are set to about the same place they should be. They have little marks on each side. So I'm okay with the deflection being around 40 millimeters. I don't really ride this bike too rough, so I'm assuming that the chain won't really be stretching. I'm not going to be doing any wheelies or anything like that, so we'll just keep an eye on that, make sure it doesn't stretch much further. Certainly on the next maintenance item, we'll check that. One of the other things it says is to check the operation of the side stand switch. I already did that. The way you do it is with the engine running, with it in gear, like first gear, you put down the side stand and the engine should kick off. Mine does that, so that works fine. It says to check all the threaded fasteners with a torque wrench on the main frame and engine. I've done that when I first got the bike. When I first took it from the dealer, a few things were loose and hanging loose, like signals and things like that. So I went over the whole bike and torqued everything down according to BMW specs, found lots of things loose, but I was able to correct all those items. So I'm okay with that. I need to check the tire pressures and tread depth. Well, as I'd mentioned, the tires are losing about 2 psi a week, and I think it's because the factory or the dealer nicked the rims. I don't know what they're doing. Kind of frustrating, but I'll check the tread depth and I'll record that, and then I'll move on to the next item. So the last things to do is check the lights and signaling equipment, final inspection and function check, and then just confirming the BMW service. I'm just going to finish this checklist, finish filling it out, and that's okay for my records because I'm going to be doing all my own maintenance. Obviously, especially after today finding more broken bolts and things, I certainly don't want the dealer touching my motorcycle. So I'm going to put this back into pristine first-class condition as it should have been from the dealer. The maintenance check, as far as I'm concerned, is done. The main thing was getting the oil changed, getting everything put back on. So I'm basically finished, so thanks for watching.